registrars.
Louis Farrakhan, one of our guests this morning. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
And I'm Joan Lunden. It is Friday. It is October 20th. If Louis Farrakhan can fulfill his promise of getting out the vote, he will have increased his power dramatically. But can he? That is the question. The leader of the Nation of Islam has been in the news all this week, the result of the Million Man March on Monday, and he will join us exclusively this morning. There he is, standing by. He'll tell us about his political plans and about his suit demanding a recount of the number of people who attended his rally.
Also this morning, we're going to get to reaction from the Park Service in Washington to Good Morning America's own report yesterday that contradicted the official estimate of how many attended the march. Right now, Spencer Christian standing by with a peek, at least, at the weather.
At least sitting by with a peek. We have changed.
Margin of error in their estimate was 25%. That still means at a minimum an estimate 50% higher than the Park Service count of 400,000. The man responsible for the official count last Monday is Major James McLaughlin of the U.S. Park Police, and he's joining us this morning from Washington. Major, I appreciate your joining us. Do you stand by your estimate?
We do stand by the 400,000 count. Yes, we do.
The recount that we commissioned used as sophisticated equipment as we understand now exists, and it approximately doubled your estimate. Do you think that estimate was wrong?
Well, I don't know if it was wrong. I don't know what technology they used. I know that you went out and hired someone to do this, and they came up with some figures that we totally disagree with. And we know what the square footage of the mall is, and we believe we know how many people can fit into that, and we stand by what we stated.
I know that you can't get photos from exactly above because you don't want to fly a helicopter over a crowd that large. Right. But is there some other way? I mean, can you use, for instance, satellite photography?
Well, if there's other ways out there, we're more than happy to look at it, and certainly we would like to get with Boston University and talk to them about it if they like. But I think you need to remember that we're a police department, and our resources are limited. And I know there was other issues about the angles and everything. Those angles don't affect us because from the angle that we take our photographs, we're looking for green grass in the mall. We're looking for area where those people are not. And our angles are sufficient as far as I'm concerned.
Quick final question. The accusation was made by organizers of the march that the underestimate was intentional, done for racial reasons. Your response to that?
That's absolutely untrue and a ridiculous statement.
All right, Major McLaughlin, I appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you for being here. Whether the real number was 400,000 or 600,000, 800,000, a million, there's no doubt the Million Man March was a highly significant political and social event. What will its impact be in the short and long term? The view now from the man who called for the march, Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, who has now had a few days to contemplate what took place, and he's joining us this morning from Chicago. Minister Farrakhan, appreciate you joining us. Why are you so hung up on a number of how many people were there?
Actually, it's history. Those poor black men who sacrificed their hard-earned dollars to be there on that mall came there for the express purpose of contributing their person to the making of history. And to rob them of the history that they made is tantamount to the same robbery that took place on our fathers when we were first brought to these shores.
But it seems
Dr. Farouk El-Baz and his estimation is a much better estimation than what the Park Service did. However, it also falls short because of the inadequacy of the photos that they used.
But it seems to me the history is in the spirit of what took place on Monday, not necessarily the number.
And my grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will not be able to see the spirit. That is a momentary thing. And that's why history should be accurate. It shouldn't be his story or our story, but the real story that should be told. And this is why we're going to court, because we have to put the truth out before the world.
Well, writers who write about it,
this was the largest demonstration in the history of this nation, and we refuse to be robbed of that victory.
But writers, it seems to me, who write about this, and already a lot has been written, will write about that spirit. That can be read. And if you look at it from the outside, some might say, look, the more the crowd, the more that Minister Farrakhan is legitimized as a leader of African Americans, and that's why he wants the estimate to be larger.
Did you know that there was an official memo from one of the department heads in Washington that said that the Metro Rail and the Metro Bus had the second largest amount of persons using that facility in 20 years, and they said 1.2 million persons use Metro Rail and Metro Bus. This does not even account for the huge number of buses, the airplanes that brought our people there. So we have to look at all of these facts to get the real truth of how many of us were actually there.
You said in the wake of the march you wanted those who support you to get involved politically and that the loyalty would not be to party but to an agenda. But you didn't lay out the agenda, and I don't know what it is. What is it?
Well, actually, in the next month, many of the African-American leaders will be meeting again in Washington, D.C. under the auspices of the National African-American Leadership Summit. And at that point, we will begin working on the agenda, and that agenda we will take in town meetings throughout this nation for our people to amend it or ratify it, and that will be the base upon which we make our moves.
Before the march on Monday, I went and looked at your publication, Final Call, and I saw a couple of issues. They both had the same article on the inside back page, and I gather that's on the inside back page of every issue of the magazine, and it said, "What Muslims Want." And it says, "We want our people to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere." And it goes on to say, "Our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs for the next 20 to 25 years. Is that part of the agenda?
Well, actually, our first want is freedom. Our second is justice. Our third is equality. And if we can get freedom, justice, and equality within the political and social sphere of this nation, then separation is not necessary. However, if freedom, justice, and equality cannot be found in this system of things, then separation is a methodology for solving the problem between the two races. However, when all of the black leaders sit together, male and female, to determine an agenda for our people, I don't think that separation will be a plank or a part of that at this point in time.
Minister Farrakhan, when you lay out the kind of agenda that you just did, the first 3 points that you made, it seems to me that what you're saying is what you want is a better life, better conditions for the blacks, the African Americans in our society. But why, what is such a mystery to so many people is why in your rhetoric you use race baiting and religious threats. Doesn't that get in the way of what it is that you eventually want?
The fact that we have been here for 440 years and are still looking for freedom, still seeking justice, still seeking equity, says that something and someone is blocking that effort. So if we point out those institutions that block our sincere desire for freedom, justice, and equality, and those persons and institutions that do that, that's not race baiting, that's pointing out the wrong that has to be corrected.
We've had on this broadcast, just in the last couple of months, it occurs to me as you speak, a couple of authors. Jeffrey Canada wrote a book called Fistic Knife Gun. Jonathan Kozol, who has written a new book called Amazing Grace. And they lay out, I think, eloquently the plight of blacks in America and the failures of whites. And they do that without calling anyone bloodsuckers or without calling whites devils or any of that kind of thing. Are they wrong with that approach? I mean, do you have to do what you're doing?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that they're wrong, but I wouldn't say that we are wrong either. You know, to hold up the mirror of truth, for a nation to look into that mirror and see themselves as they look in the eyes of God, that standard or criterion represented by all the prophets doesn't make America or those of us in America look so good. And maybe we want to break the mirror, but the thing we ought to do is clean up our act, straighten up our lives, that we can be in the favor of God rather than in his disfavor.
But words matter. And they matter when they drive divisions between parts of our society. And doesn't
I'm very sorry, sir, but we and words have not driven divisions. We came here in the holds of ships, and we were segregated on the plantations. And since we have been set free, black folk live in a certain part of town. 30 years ago, the Kerner Commission said we had two Americas, one white, one black, separate and unequal. And they revisited their findings and found it even worse today. Muslim ideology or words did not do that, but it is the acts of government and institutions that have done that. And if, sir, over $1 trillion has been spent by the United States government since the Johnson administration to sort of fix things, and they have not been fixed, please don't blame the divisiveness on Louis Farrakhan. You better look at yourself, look at your government, look at your institutions, look at your courts, and look at the injustice that prevails in this society.
Mr. Farrakhan, Minister Farrakhan, on that point, we will leave it. Thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
Good to talk to you.